Welcome back everyone. In this lesson we're going to look at dictionaries. Now dictionaries are really useful. They are basically key value pairs, so every value that you're looking for or want to categorize is identified by a key that points to that value. So when we want that particular value, we just say, here is the key, go and find the value. And Python will go through the dictionary looking for that key and return the value. Now they're mutable, so we can actually change the values in place. We can grow and shrink dictionaries at will. So we can have 1, 2, 10, 10,000 entries in a dictionary, depending upon our need. And they're flexible because they can hold any other data type, including a dictionary, within the dictionary. Now we mentioned the key value pairs. That means that when we want a value, we're using the key. We're not using the index or the position, because the position could be anywhere in the items within that dictionary. And we'll see that when we start coding. And they're real world friendly. What do I mean by that? When we look at structured data, we generally look for something which identifies a piece of information which is valuable to us. So for example, a claim number, we say, here's the claim ID, which is the key to what I'm looking for. And here is the actual value for that claim ID. And that relates very easily to the concept of dictionaries. Again, when we start looking at the coding, that'll become clear to you. So let's go onto the coding screen and start playing with this. Okay, so here we are on the coding screen. Here what I've done is I've defined a dictionary and use a curly brackets to say the start and end of a dictionary declaration, okay? The dictionary is called claim, and within there we have key value pairs. So we're saying the first key is ID, and we've assigned a value to it, and we use a colon to separate between the key and the value. And then for each key value pair that we are holding in our dictionary, we separate them by commas, okay? So we have three keys in here: ID, claim status, and loss. And the three values are claim 001, open, and collision. And these are pairs of key values. So that's how we declare the dictionary. How do we then bring values back from them? We say the dictionary name, we put square brackets, and within the square brackets we put the key that we're using to bring the value back. And Python will go through to this dictionary, which is called claim, using this key and bring the value back associated with that key. So that's how we declare the dictionary, and this is how we bring back a value for a particular key from that dictionary. Now that's one way of us declaring a dictionary. There is an alternative that you can use, and the way we do that is say, let's clear this, and we can use a dict constructor, okay? And the way we do that, we say claim, which is what we're going to call our dictionary, equals dict, and we say for each key and value, we can say ID, for example, which is our key, equals claim 003, and then we comma delimit each of our key value pairs. So we can say claim status, let's keep that lowercase, equals open, and we say loss equals vandalism. So this particular claim is because of vandalism. Right, so now what we've done, we've declared our dictionary and we've declared our key value pairs. So instead of using the curly brackets, the equivalent is using a dict constructor, but using the open brackets because it's essentially a function. Now we bring back values in the same way, so we can say print claim ID. And if we run that, we get the value back from that particular key. So that's an alternative way of creating a dictionary using the dict constructor. So what happens if we have a dictionary which we're going to use for future use? Okay, so we don't know what the values are going to be, but we know what the keys are going to be. Well, we can use the dict constructor again, and we use the from keys method. And what we do, we first set up a list. In this case, we've called it fields. And in that list, we've got the 3 keys that we're going to use: the ID, claim status, and loss. And then we define our dictionary. We're calling it default claim. Using the dict constructor, we're using the from keys method, and we're saying take the fields from that list, which are going to be our keys, and assign to them unknown. So here we've put unknown inside square brackets, and that will then be our default value. And when we print that, you see what we've got here. We've got each of those keys which we defined as items in a list called fields, and we've got the unknown as a default value against each of those keys. So how do we deal with a scenario where we've got a key that doesn't exist in our dictionary? So we want to get the value back, but the key actually doesn't exist in the dictionary, so there will be no value for it, default or otherwise. Well, there's a get method to handle that. And the get method allows us to state a value to be returned if the key doesn't exist, rather than have Python fall over and complain to you, which would be the worst thing in a code. You want it to continue, but also handle the error. And the way we use the get method is we say, so for example, we want to print default claim, and we're looking for date of loss. Now we know date of loss hasn't been declared in this dictionary as a key, right? But we want to have a way of it being handled, okay? We use get as our method, and we say does not exist. So we say key does not exist, we'll say, right? So what have we done here? We've said use the get method on this dictionary. We're looking for this key, and if that key doesn't exist, just say key does not exist. So if we run that, that's exactly what we get back. Because the date of loss key does not exist in this dictionary. You've only got ID, claim status, and loss as the keys. And we've set the default value to unknown for them. If we were to add date of loss to our list of declared keys for that dictionary and ran this, we would get unknown back, because we've set that as a value for all keys that we've declared as a default value for those keys. And therefore, when Python goes to look for date of loss, it finds it in this dictionary, but also it finds the default setting for the value. But if it weren't to exist, then it would say key does not exist. And that's very useful so that your program doesn't fall over if you're looking for a key that hasn't been declared in that dictionary. So let's look now at some methods of updating keys with values, okay? Well, the first method we're going to look at is actually how to do this manually. So imagine we have a new claim. Let's declare new claim as our dictionary name, okay? And we start there by putting curly brackets there, saying it's an empty dictionary at the moment. And our first key, called ID, we will assign as claim 004, for example. Okay, if we print that so far, you see that claim 004 has been assigned to ID. Let's carry on. Let's assign some more key values, okay? So we can do a new claim, claim status equals open. And we'll say new claim, and the date it was opened, we'll say it's Tuesday. We'll say also that it was a collision type of loss, okay? So let's say claim for a collision on a vehicle, say, for example. I'm using double quotes and single quotes just inconsistently here, but you can stick to either single or double quotes. I'm just trying to demonstrate that you can use either here. Collision. Okay, right. Now, if we would then print new claim, we now have our key value pairs. Now we've looked at assigning values to keys manually here, okay? But we could use a for loop to apply the values to keys, iterating through any data type which allows us to iterate through it. So a list allows us to iterate through that list, picking up the key value pairs as we do. And because in reality, when we receive data for our target system that we're going to be reporting from, we could receive that in many different formats. So I'm just going to demonstrate one way of doing this. So we're going to imagine that our updates to a particular claim for each of the keys is coming through a list of pairs. So the pairs are basically the key, comma, the value, okay? Now we've used tuples in the past, so we're going to incorporate the use of tuples in this example, all right? So let's take our list of updates, and we'll say it's a set of tuples. There's our key that we're going to take from the tuple, and we've got our value, okay? Then we've got the next one, which is the loss type, and the value for that, okay? So what's happening here is that we've got imagine we've got an existing claim, but we haven't got all of the data related to it. So we're now trying to capture the updates for that particular claim dictionary. And in this case, the status is going to be closed and the loss is actually a theft loss, okay, for that claim. So we'll set up our claim. And this is a dictionary, so we use the curly brackets. And we say ID, using the colon to signify we're now looking. I'm going to give it the value, claim 05. So at the moment in our dictionary, all we have is the ID, but we're going to now use something called a for loop to iterate through our list that we've created here, picking up the key value pairs on every iteration, and then assigning it to a key and a value in the dictionary called claim, right? And we are going to iterate through this list. Now, this list has 2 items, and each of those items is a tuple consisting of 2 items. So on every iteration, we're picking up 2 values from each of those tuples. So if we do something like this, or key, comma, value, and basically you can say anything here. We're just saying, we're calling it key and value. We're saying there are 2 values to pick up on every iteration. In claim updates list, we use a colon now because we're going to loop through this. We're now going to assign the value to the key. So what we're going to do is say claim key, which is the first value we pick up, in this case it's claim status, equals value. And the first iteration, the claim status will be closed, right? And then it will loop round and go to the next item in the iteration, which is this tuple, and it will say the key, which is loss, the value, which is theft, let claim loss equal theft. So it's assigning the second item in the tuple to the first item, which is the key. And if we print that at the end, let's get rid of our top one. We run that through. So we assigned ID with the value of claim 005. And when it ran through this list, it then picked up claim status and assigned it closed. It picked up loss and it assigned it theft. So it's gone through using a for loop, picking up the items in each tuple and assigning the key with the value. And that's just one method of creating a dictionary using a for loop. So let's look at using set default method for dictionaries. And set default is really useful because if you're looking for a particular key and the key hasn't been established for that dictionary, what it will do is it will assign a default value to it, so that when you then subsequently read that dictionary, you'll see that new key that you are looking for with the default value. So let me demonstrate this, okay? So if we say, for example, let's take a claims log, okay? Imagine we're holding the number of opened and closed and rejected claims in a particular day, okay? Saying open 5, closed 3. Okay, that's our claims log, but we haven't got the rejected ones in there at the moment, okay? So if we just did a print of that claims log, just see what it looks like. So there's our key value pairs. Now what we're going to do is we're going to say print claims log set default, and we're looking for rejected, okay? And we'll say if there aren't any there, we'll just say the default is 0, okay? Right, now let's print our claims log now. You see now the rejected that we were looking for, which didn't exist, has been assigned a default value. All right, and because a dictionary is mutable, we could then actually go ahead and assign the actual value later on when we find out the number of rejected claims at the end of the day. So we make a scenario at the end of the day where we decide, okay, the number of rejected claims was 4, and if we then assign 4 to rejected and then print that, we see that initially, where we had the default value, it was 0. And then once we'd assigned the value of 4 to the rejected key, and we print that, we see that it's actually a 4 coming up now, okay? The point here is that we were initially looking for the value, but it didn't exist, but we assigned a 0 to it as a default. And then later on, when we did update it, we didn't have to create that key. It already existed, and we just assigned a value to it. Now, there's one other thing I want to show you using dictionaries, and that is using a dictionary to update an existing dictionary, right? So that's the update method. So imagine here where we've got our claims log, which has got 3 keys and their associated values. Imagine now we had another dictionary, and we call that more logging, okay? And that looks like this. We've got an additional key value pair in there. And we'll say the value is the date, okay, that these logs are happening. Okay, so log date or log day, we'll say that's Monday. Okay, so there's our dictionary of a key value pair, and we're now going to use this dictionary to update our original claims log. And the way we do that, we say claims log dot update, and we use our second dictionary, more logging, right? And when we print that, then let's have a look what happens. See, what's happened is it's taken this dictionary and it's updated the claims log dictionary with the contents of this more logging dictionary, and we've now got an additional entry which is the contents of the more logging dictionary added to the original one that we'd created. Okay, so that's as much as I want to go through on dictionaries. We've explained how we create them, different methods of creating them, dealing with defaults, merging dictionaries together. So you've got a level of competence. We're still looking at basic principles here in these data types, but it's a good building block for us to go forward with.